What's up, guys? My name is Preston, and I am here on behalf of Street Cars One-on-One Media. And I have today Mike Musto here. Did I pronounce that right, Mike? Is it Musto?
It is. It is. It can go either way. A lot of people say Musto. A lot of people say Musto. Musto is if you really want to be Italian. Musto is more of the Americanized version. Either way is totally good. You're golden.
Well, I thank you for taking time to speak with us today. Um, tell the people who you are because I know who you are. You're a great guy to me, but tell the people who you are. They see you behind the camera. Well, who is Mike?
I think it's. I mean, first and foremost, I'm an enthusiast. I'm a car enthusiast. I've been a car enthusiast and a motorcycle enthusiast my entire life. Right. Um, right now, I'm the director of programming at Hemmings. So basically, I'm responsible for all the programming that goes on, development of programming, development of production shows, and things like that. Um, and it's it's just a lot of fun. Before I did this, own my own business as far as an automotive consulting company where I would deal with brands and go in and kind of pick them apart and try to help them put them back together or kind of examine what their vision is and try to take them forward and things. Um, but I guess at its core, really kind of an automotive journalist that likes to tell stories about people in the hobby, not necessarily famous people by any means, more or less the people that you'll see at a car show that are just kind of sitting by their car and you can walk up to, and all of a sudden a conversation starts and they come out with some of the greatest stories you've ever seen or ever heard. That's what I truly love to do. It's just be a storyteller and talk about cars.
So let's jump into that a little bit. I watched
Sure.
your show that you have that's currently on Hemmings.
Hmm.
And I seen the Camaro and the Camaro, what's his name is Mr. It started with
Mr.
a T.
Totem.
Mr. Totem. There you
Mr.
go.
Totem.
Mr.
Yep.
Totem had a really, really, really nice car, and I loved his story. I loved the art that went along with what he had built. What was that like getting to experience that whole moment?
Well, so this is a show called The House of Muscle, right? And The House of Muscle is an offshoot of a show called Big Muscle, which I did started, God, it's 14 years ago now. When YouTube really started to kind of kick off. That was on the Drive Network, which was one of the first real automotive networks on the internet. And you had some great hosts. You had Matt Farah, you had Chris Harris, you had Mike Spinelli, and a whole bunch of us that were kind of in the right place at the right time, creating automotive content. Um, the show was, as a muscle car guy, for the most part, it was about finding people with great stories. The car is the catalyst for the story. A car in and of itself can't tell a story. The owner uses that car to create memories and to create stories. And through that vehicle, you learn about them and what they do. So we had created this show called Big Muscle and literally filmed, I don't know how many, a couple of hundred or 100 episodes or whatever it was. And then went to Motor Trend, had the show rebranded into the House of Muscle, and then started it again on Hemmings we just did our third episode, but we've got another three or four more to come. And the show is always about the individual who owns the car. And we get a lot of submissions. I get comments of how do I get on your show? And I go, well, give me a story. Tell me about your car. My first question is generally, well, how many miles did you drive the car last year? Some people say, I drove the car 500 miles. I'll do 500 miles tomorrow in the rain. That's not driving your car, right? You tell me, did you build the car with your parents? Did you, if you're a little older, did you take your son home from the hospital in it when he was born? Do you use it as the catalyst to, get into the hobby and so on and so forth?
Yes.
Um, it's all about figuring out why people love what they have
Mhm.
and why that vehicle acts as not only a kind of a mental getaway, but as a psychologist, as a therapist, as something that just takes them away from the grind of everyday life. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree 1000% because getting in my car is absolutely therapy. When you're having one of those days, it's like just the happy place that you can go get in and start it up and hear that
Hmm.
roar and just go through those gears, and it just takes everything away in that moment. Like you just there, you're in that moment.
It does, and I think that people sometimes forget that, right? I mean, I think people view vehicles in many different ways, and there's no one right vehicle for everyone, right? You could drive a bone stock Volkswagen Jetta, but if that car serves the purpose of taking you away when you go out just for a ride to clear your head, then it's doing its job, right? Um, I think that for the most part, people sometimes forget what a vehicle is and what it's kind of evolved into, right? When I was a kid, the only thing we ever wanted to do was drive a car. And this was before cell phones. I'm dating myself,
Yep.
but there were no cell phones. There were no this. So the only way you would escape is you get your driver's license, you'd get in your car, you go for a ride. That was freedom. Where now I look at newer vehicles, and while they're all wonderful, that freedom is somewhat it's been taken away because in some sense you're always connected, whether the car has a GPS or, it's whatever tracking system it has for, God forbid the car breaks down or something like that. You're always connected, and you're losing the automobile itself has kind of lost the freedom that it used to give, in my opinion, right?
Yep.
You can no longer just go and get lost in a vehicle. They can always find you. When
Yes.
I was a kid, if you got lost in a vehicle, they couldn't find you unless you wanted to be found, right?
That's
And
true.
so, yeah, it's a little
That's
different.
true. Well, I
Yeah.
don't want to throw my edge out there also, but I got lost in a vehicle as well. So what you're saying is like literally spot on. It took me to a point in my life where I actually had a cell phone though. I had to call my dad because that was the time you had to print out MapQuest directions. And
Yeah.
I had to call my dad and had to get assistance to get out of a location here
Sure.
in my area. So yes, you're spot on with that. But I do want to ask you a question. When you were were driving that Blazer on episode number 2, and
Hmm.
you slammed on brakes, was that
Hmm.
like a oh crap moment? Or was that like I feel so secure because this vehicle is well built? Because that looks
No,
so fun, but it looks scary.
it's interesting. When we drive vehicles for House of Muscle, I look at it a certain way. One year, and I tell this to people a lot. If someone gives me permission to drive their vehicle, right? That's a responsibility that I take really, really seriously, because it's kind of like saying, "Hey, this is my significant other, right? I love them dearly. I care about them. You can go out, and if you want to go to dinner, have a great time. Don't ever cross the line. Don't ever cross the line." And I treat vehicles the same way. So when you see us doing something like that, and doing performance stuff with vehicles, we always have permission to do that. But with that particular vehicle, this was the Ring Brothers Blazer, 72 Blazer called Bully.
Episode
That
number
is
2 on House of
episode number
Muscle.
two.
Yep.
This is a vehicle that is a complete one-off. I mean, every single part is handmade. It is a stunning creation. And my whole thing when I first drove it was like, is it going to be any good? Because you and I both hear about these super high-end builds.
Yes.
9 times out of 10, you go to SEMA. SEMA is the place of Bluetooth drive shafts and things that don't work, all this other crap. But you'll see all these great cars, but you never see them work, right? You never see them on the road. You never see them being driven in anger or fun or whatever the case is.
Yep.
And the Ring brothers were different. They were like, Mike, just go. Have at it, man. Just go. And I drove that truck for 2 days, and it was nothing but flawless. So when it came time to kind of have a little fun, I was like, guys, I asked Mike and Jim, I was like, can I play with it? They were like, you're not gonna break it, go ahead. And it was great. It did everything it was supposed to do. And it was yeah, when I hit the brakes, it nosedived, which was exactly what it was supposed to do because it had a full Baja suspension in it.
Yes.
And then when I slammed on the accelerator, I mean, it had 37-inch tires that just went up in smoke. Like,
Yes, it did. Yeah.
yeah, dude,
I
it
raised
was
eyebrows at that one.
yeah, it was great. It was a really good time, and it was everything that I hoped it would be. Yeah, it was really cool.
All right. So House of Muscle episode drops every week.
Hmm.
Every
Yep.
week. Mike is the host of it. If you guys haven't seen it, please go check it out. It's actually a really good show on YouTube to watch. And
Yep.
it's sponsored by him. And so,
Yep.
guys, please
It's on the Hemmings YouTube channel.
on him his YouTube channel.
Yep.
There you guys go. Please go check it out. It's absolutely a great show to watch. And I think it's the host that makes it that great because
Thank you.
you're living through his experience and he is articulating it very well.
Thank you.
So, All right. So I gotta ask you now a couple rapid fire questions. All right.
Shoot.
Favorite engine sound of all time. What would it be?
V8, hands down.
Okay. Okay. Is
V8.
there
I don't care if it's a small block, big block,
okay. There we go.
supercharged, turbo, V8. That's it.
All right. All right. Dream road trip. Where and in what car?
Oh wow. Oh God. I've been super fortunate that I've driven all over the place. I've driven across the United States probably 12 times in old cars. I've driven across Europe. I've been super, super fortunate. Um, I was very fortunate a couple of years ago to probably do the greatest dream road trip in the world. Um, a very dear friend of mine invited us to Europe, and we did uh, the Autobahn and the Nürburgring, and went all through Europe,
Nice.
Stelvio Pass and the Alps and everything, in brand new at the time, brand new Porsche 911s, and it was
Oh man.
yeah, that was one of those things
Wow.
where you go through and you're driving through the Swiss Alps in a brand new Porsche, and you're going, yeah, I don't know if this is it, I'm ever going to top this. Um, because most people know me as a straight muscle car guy,
hmm
but I love everything. I mean, I have currently I have a BMW, I've got a Bronco, I've got I had a couple of Porsches. Like, I love automobiles. So, but that one was probably the best. Like, touring Europe in a brand new 911, doing the Autobahn in the ring, like, that was
You
best
can't
part of
beat
this.
that. That's just it's
No,
creating an image that's like literally unbeatable
dude, it
right
was
now.
so good. It was a fantasy trip. It really, truly was.
Well, next time I'm gonna hold you to getting my invitation out there. So there we
Yeah.
go. All right. What's a car that you regret selling in your life?
A total oddball. I had a 1970 Chrysler Newport Custom, which
Okay.
is, for most people, it's a car that many people just don't even know about or don't even care about. But it was Chrysler from 1969 to essentially 1975 made the fuselage bodies, which were some of the biggest American cars ever made. And I bought this 70 Newport, and it was just cherry. It was all white, non-vinyl top, 383 power windows, AC, the whole deal, and it was awesome. It was just awesome. And like an idiot, I sold it to buy an 81 Turbo Trans Am, which was one of the biggest piles of crap that I've ever had. It was a pile of crap. It just wasn't great. It looked amazing. It was one of the best looking cars I've ever had, but mechanically one of the worst. Um, but the Newport was, I should have never sold that car. It's the one that got away because of my own stupidity. And I've been looking to find another one. I just haven't found the right one yet. But as soon as I do, I'm going to buy another one.
Okay. So what would you consider the worst car you ever driven then?
Oh, that I've ever driven?
Yeah.
Oh, phew. I mean, so that's a big one. So we've had, because I do so much production work, and because I'm very fortunate that I get to drive other people's cars. Um, we drove one car that a builder had given us, and he pretty much lied about the car. We had asked him if he had a bunch of test miles on it. Said he had about 500. He had about 50. We got into the car. It was a Roadster. I want to say it was like a 32 Ford Roadster, twin turbo, probably 900 horsepower or so.
Oh, okay.
It was Nothing was sorted. Like, we did
Oh,
one pull, put my foot down, the brake pedal went to the floor because the brakes didn't work. And it was one of those cars where that was probably the worst experience that I've had.
hmm
And it was one of those things where, like I said, I take driving other people's stuff very, very seriously, but
yes.
I also count on them to, if a vehicle has issues, to let me know. And this was more of a case where that individual just wanted to get press and
Mm.
gave us a car that wasn't nearly ready to drive. So thankfully, that was relatively early on in my career. And so it kind of taught me to take, I hate to say not trust, but to do a ton of due diligence
Right. Fact check.
before I get
Yeah.
behind the wheel of the vehicle, to make sure that it's one, that it's not going to kill me, right? But
Yes.
then two, that I can properly depict it for the audience, so that when they see it, they go, you know what, that was really cool. That's So yeah, that was an old T bucket. That was a sketchy as hell, man, and not good.
Okay, so now I have to ask you. We're gonna go into I would call this the automotive world most controversial subject right now. What do you think
Sure.
about electric vehicles?
I think I think electric vehicles absolutely have their place for the right situation and in the right situation. Um,
Yes.
if you don't have a big commute
Mhm.
and you want to use it as a get around town car and stuff like that, then that's fine. I think, and I shouldn't even say that. It goes way beyond that. I think it's a personal choice. For me, electric vehicles don't, well, at least not yet, don't have the personality that I want. And I've driven Teslas and I've driven Lucids and I've driven, just about everything for the most part on the EV side.
Mhm.
They're all fun. They're all performance wise, petrol driven ICE cars are never going to touch an EV for speed and performance. Those days
Agreed.
that ship has sailed. Ship
Agreed.
has sailed. It's gone,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
When you can go to the drag strip and a Lucid comes up and it rips off an 890 in the quarter,
Yep.
right? You're not doing that in a
Nope.
in a petrol car unless it's a pro stock or something. You're just not doing it. Um, my problem with that is if you go to the same drag strip and the
Mhm.
Lucid goes or whatever, Tesla, whatever, and it blasts that quarter mile, if you turn around, that vehicle is so ignorable because you can't hear it. And
Yes.
one of the things that I truly love about vehicles um, is the theater that they bring. And part of that theater has to do with noise, and it has to do with um, you know, getting your attention. And if I can turn around and ignore something that looks beautiful and that's got great performance, but it has no sound, that's a problem for me. Now, again, I've thought about buying an electric vehicle,
Mhm.
but for the sole purpose of literally, like if I have to go into this, like I live in the Bay Area, if I have to go into the city and park it and whatever, and I don't have to worry about it, it's a vehicle that I hate to say that I won't really care about,
Mhm.
but it's just not, I want something more engaging. That's all. I want something that when I turn the key or hit the button, something wakes me up, not put me to sleep. That's all.
That's fair. I like your perspective on that. You're
Yeah.
you're not saying that you're against it. You're just
No,
waiting until you find something that pulls you to it. I like your perspective on that.
that's exactly it. It has to check my boxes for a vehicle, not just any vehicle, but for a vehicle as a whole.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on autonomous driving then and like cars of the future because of autonomous driving?
So again, this is another thing. There's a eventually there will be a place. Autonomous driving does not exist right now. There are those in the Tesla world that'll call me up, be like, Musto, you're an asshole. You don't know what you're talking about. It's Tesla. They, okay. When I think of autonomous driving, I think of I'm going to go into my garage. I'm
Mhm.
going to get in the car. I'm going to punch in an address. I'm going to lay back. I'm going to close my eyes. The car's going to wake me up when I get there.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm. Yep.
What you're seeing now is anything, if you talk about like Blue Cruise in a Cadillac, or you talk about autonomous driving in a Tesla,
Mhm.
those are all driver assist features.
Yes.
That's what they are.
Mhm.
Living in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, if you go into the city, there are Jaguar F-Paces running all over the place, fully autonomous, no drivers. Okay. And they run on a grid and they are driverless cars, fully autonomous, right?
Mhm.
In a certain area. And there is a place for that in the future. If you're an individual who, for instance, can't drive anymore because of a disability, or you get too old, or something happens, then an autonomous vehicle would be an absolutely wonderful thing because it keeps your mobility going and allows you to get from point A to point B. And you don't have to worry about your eyesight or your this or your that, or if you have, again, some kind of physical ailment. So my hope is that they get it there eventually.
Yep.
It's not there yet. We're still a ways away from it. And there are those out there that are totally going to vehemently disagree with me. Um, I would like to see it eventually become a reality in certain markets. I also look at, like, I grew up in Brooklyn, right? And New
Mhm.
York City. You got hundreds of thousands of people that, and granted, not, the majority of them aren't that great a driver. We know this. But it's one of those things where, I've seen too many autonomous vehicle incidents happen so far that I'm not a full believer in it yet. In 25 years, who knows? But right now, I just don't think we're there yet.
So when I think of iRobot, the movie that came out back in the day with Will Smith, he
Hmm.
was in autonomous cars, riding down the highway, taking them from point A to point B. That's exactly what I think of as you're saying that as well. Autonomous vehicle is a vehicle that can, if you have a disability, or maybe if you're leaving the pub and you needed to get home, hop in that
Exactly.
vehicle that'll take you home where you don't have to be responsible for starting up, getting behind the wheel, and putting it in a mode that is semi-autonomous to get you home.
Hmm.
I love that point of view. That is really well put.
Yeah, I mean, you try to be objective about it, but the other thing that you have to consider is like everybody's got a phone, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's got an iPhone, everybody's got a Galaxy, so whatever the case is. Every now and again, I still got to reboot this,
Yes.
right? This
Yes.
is this
Yes.
is I still got to reboot it. So, do I want to let essentially a rolling iPad take charge of my safety? I don't know. Not like I said, not there yet.
Not quite.
Not that I don't like it. Just not there yet. That's all.
Agreed. I do agree with that. So what are your thoughts on the future of manual transmissions, because they seem to be going away slowly? What do you think
Mhm.
about that? You came from that era where manual transmissions were how you learned how to drive, and you
Oh yeah.
seen the step into automatics, and now you're seeing the step back out of, not necessarily out of, but less production of manual transmissions. What are your opinions or thoughts on that?
I think it's personal preference, right?
Mhm.
There aren't nearly as many manuals. There's a handful of manuals that are made today. I think a lot of it is somewhat generational. I think a lot of kids right now, um, it's not that they don't want to drive manuals, it's just there aren't a lot of manual cars for them to drive.
Mhm.
When I was a kid, we had grew up with manual transmission, so you had to drive it. You either learned how to drive a manual or you didn't drive, right?
Yep.
So whether it was your dad's, Volkswagen Beetle or it was a 280 Zix or it was a pickup truck or whatever the case is,
Yep.
you had to learn. Again, I started driving in the late 80s. So for me, manuals were everywhere. Now in 2024, manuals aren't.
Agreed.
And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's much, much more difficult to infuse the amount of technology that manufacturers want to infuse in a vehicle with a manual transmission, right?
Yep.
Cruise control, perfect example of cruise control, right? Manual, you got your cruise control and you got to slow down to a certain amount. The car is not going to shift gears for you. It simply won't. But
Mhm.
the other part is cars are getting so much more powerful now.
Yes.
And, where a manual transmission doesn't really work for them. And I'll give you a perfect example. Like I have my 69 Daytona, we just did a red eye swap in that car. And I went from having a low deck stroker that made about 550 horsepower through a manual transmission, right? To a red eye, which makes over 800 now with an 8-speed automatic. And the reason I did that was because do you know how difficult it is to drive a manual car with 800 or 900 horsepower? It is it is a nightmare. It's too powerful for you to shift. It's just not fun. Whereby, say if you jump in a Miata, right?
Mhm.
115 horsepower. You can tack that sucker out to 7 grand in every gear, and maybe you're doing 48 miles an hour. It's engaging and it's fun, and that's where manuals need to live. I think you know, or pickup trucks, the same thing. Like there's a place for them,
Yes.
but cars are getting so advanced that it's pushing the manual out. I just hope that manufacturers, especially kind of performance manufacturers, always see fit
Mhm.
to include a manual in their lineup because, in my opinion, it is still one of the greatest joys of driving to row gears, and that's whether you're talking about six on the floor or you've got a three on the tree or whatever the case is. If I think everybody should learn how to drive a manual, dude. It's the same way that I think everybody should learn how to use their mirrors as opposed to stupid backup cameras.
Uh,
That's all.
don't get me on that subject. I have seen that so many times. There's been so many near incidents where people are looking at their center console instead of looking at their mirrors because they're conditioned to look at equipment in the car.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that 1000%. So do you see a a role of social media and YouTube is shaping the car culture currently?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, everything now is video and social media and YouTube and everything else, right? That's where the majority of the world. The fact that you have car companies, the fact that people are buying cars now
Mhm.
sight unseen, meaning they might see a review of a
Yes.
car and then go out
Yes.
and buy a vehicle without ever putting their own physical eyes on it
Yep.
or getting in the driver's boggles my mind. Like that boggles my mind. Um, Reviews are great, right? When you watch YouTube and you reviews are great for giving you information and giving you perspective on, okay, this is this woman's or this man's or this individual's opinion on a vehicle. They're going to tell you what it does, how it does it, why it does it well, or why it doesn't do it well. Okay. As
Mhm.
a consumer, your job is to still go out and physically put your ass in the seat and physically experience that thing.
Yep.
Because if you don't, one, it's a massive expense, right? A car, the average price of a new car right now is pushing $50,000. It
Yes.
is the second largest expense next to purchasing a home for 90% of the population, in the US.
Yep.
And it is, you mean to tell me that you're going to spend, say your budget's 30 grand.
Mhm.
You're going to spend 30 grand without ever experiencing what it does? Like that makes no sense to me.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
so yes, social media, YouTube, 100% has a place. I just hope consumers are smart enough to say, okay, this is my starting point. Now I physically still have to go to a dealer and experience what this individual told me about this vehicle for myself. So that's kind of the way that I look at it. For entertainment purposes, hell yeah, man. You want to take a car and slide around a racetrack or take a truck and jump off the thing, whatever. God bless. We all love doing that. It's fun. It still brings out the hooligan in all of us. Um, but again, you're gonna buy something that you really want, whether it's old or new, do your due diligence and do your research and yeah, stick your ass in the seat, figure out what it really is.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I'm gonna ask you a question here to get us ready to close this interview out. I think this is going to be a good one for you.
Sure.
If you can make a documentary about any car, which car would you want to make that documentary about to be remembered for your legacy?
Which it would like any car or something
Any
that I
car,
own or any car?
any
Oh,
car in
wow.
the world. If you can make a documentary that spoke to your legacy, what would that car be that would speak to your legacy as a documentary?
I mean, there were so many amazing cars out there. For me personally, I would choose one of mine. I would choose my old '68 Charger because it's the car that I've had it for over 20 years. It's the car that it's the reason that I have a career. It's the car that every time the garage door opens, and I mean, I'm super fortunate. I've got a cool, kind of fleet of vehicles. That's the one that I always walk to. And when I tell people about going out and finding something that they really like, you have to always want to go back to that vehicle. You
Yes.
have to always want to say, out of everything that's here, that's the one I really want to get in, right?
Yeah.
And I've been really fortunate that I've found that car. For some people, the search will continue and continue and continue and continue. That's why I always say, if somebody gives you the opportunity and says, "Listen, would you like to drive this?" Never say no. Always at 100%, right? Don't be bashful. If they give you the opportunity, respect the opportunity, but put your ass in the seat and drive it and experience it because you might you might have dismissed that vehicle 6 ways from Sunday, and then you get in it and you drive it and you're like, oh my God, I was so wrong, right? So for me personally, it's my old Charger only because I have that much history in it, and it's kind of like a part of my family. Everybody that you interview is going to give you a different answer, and I'm actually very
Absolutely.
curious to see what they say about that.
Well, in 60 seconds, what can you tell us next that's coming down the pipeline for Mike and his career?
Oh wow, that's a good question. So we've got a bunch more episodes of the House Muscle coming out, which is great. Everything from a wicked, wicked cool Pantera to an old T bucket to my Daytona and a couple of others. Um, but what's next? I mean, I'm super fortunate. I'm at Hemmings right now, which is a company that's 70 years old. That we're kind of in the process of reinventing. And it's a great place to be because the reinvention part is fun. It's a company where, like I'm sure, like your father, your grandfather at some point had a Hemmings magazine in the house,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Like most did. But if you're a little on the younger side, the brand has probably escaped a little bit. We're all looking at it going, okay, now it's time. It's time to bring some new content out there and to appeal to that younger demographic and to really start to have fun because at its core, we're a marketplace, we sell cars, but you can't sell cars and you can't list cars without really understanding, knowing, and enjoying cars, right? Because it's just like you. I'm sure you get hit with 1,000 questions. You're probably the guy that if somebody has a car question, you're the guy they call, right?
Yep.
Press blue.
Always.
Right.
Always. Yes.
So to be in a company that is essentially that guy is a really cool place to be. Um, yeah, and dude, and plus we still fill cars, man. I still get to go out and drive cars and have fun with cars. It's like if you're fortunate enough to get a career in this business and you can make it last and you can enjoy it. It's like that old adage, right? You find what you love, you never work a day again. That's 100%
Absolutely.
true.
Absolutely.
100% true. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking time to speak with Street Cars One on One. And your show again comes on. Episode drops every week on his channel. Mike is the host of it. Thank you for taking time to speak with us. We really appreciate that, and we hope to be able to speak with you again eventually.
Preston, always a pleasure, buddy. It was great to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Until next time.
Okay.